and thanks to those of you who are going to end up watching this video. This video could very well reach nobody other than people who know I exist and post videos on YouTube, who actually look for it specifically. I've noticed in recent weeks that people who have made videos that humanize the Palestinian people, that call out the brutality and the war crimes of the Israeli government as they bombard Gaza, the Palestinian people, with death, destruction, and horror, their videos get demonetized. You have plenty of people who have much larger platforms than I do, who make their living from YouTube, who count on partially the views they get and the advertiser income to help fund the organizations, the small, low-level organizations where they do news, where they do social and political commentary on podcasts, on YouTube channels, and YouTube has had a penchant lately, and I've noticed TikTok. I did one video so far on Gaza, on the what's going on with the Israelis attacking the Palestinians in Gaza, and it was suppressed by TikTok. Normally I'll get anywhere between 150 views to in the 400 to 500 view range for videos that I post on my TikTok channel. And so you're seeing all these views, 200 and something here, 300 there, 400 here, 200 there. You get to the one on my dashboard, my TikTok dashboard, regarding the Palestinians and the atrocious behavior of the Israeli government and what they're doing to the Palestinians, and it literally has one view. It has been up for a month now, something like that, a month and a half, and literally one view. So you have these social media platforms that are suppressing people who are talking out about the atrocities that are going on against the Palestinian people, and there's a very widespread effort to suppress any kind of humanization of the Palestinians, and so you have some larger channels that have even addressed being demonetized videos if they talk about the Palestinians and they're not just gobbing praise on Israel and sympathy on Israel. If they talk about what's going on with the aerial bombardment, military bombardment of Gaza, they get demonetized. I mean, for me, fortunately, I make no money from YouTube, therefore they have no demonetization power over me right now. But what they do have the ability to do is to make sure my videos don't get in front of any eyeballs, that people have to seek them out if they're going to watch a particular video. So far my channel has grown very slowly, somewhat sporadically, but I'm happy with it. You know, I do this as a kind of cathartic way of talking through issues that bother me, and this gives me an outlet. So YouTube can't demonetize me, however they can very heavily suppress this video. So if you are somebody who knows me, knows this channel exists, and you seek it out and watch this video, thank you. This video may get 0 views, it may get 1 or 2 or 3 views from people that actually look for new videos on my channel. Other than that, it may be completely suppressed on the platform. But it has to be talked about because you have this action-reaction insanity going on, and it's barbaric on both sides. And this video, I guess the first way to start off would be to talk about how the Middle East is and has been for a very long time a powder keg. The Middle East is a powder keg, and you've got some people in that area constantly trying to light matches. Right now, it's Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, that this country, America, heavily supports. It's insanity, but we do. And on October 7th, as anybody that pays any attention to the news knows, Hamas, which is a terrorist organization located in that region, their base is Gaza, launched a terror attack on Israel. Initially, the report was around 1,400 people killed. Now the Israelis have backed it down to 1,200. Still an atrocious number. And what was done, the brutal rapes and torture and murder, burning people alive, is atrocious. Certainly a war crime by Hamas. What Hamas did to Israel was atrocious, and Israel had the sympathy of the world coming down on them because they had just experienced a horrific terror attack. There's never any defense of a terrorist attack. There's never any defense of a brutal, senseless killing of human beings for any reason. So I'm not here to, although some people will claim that I am somehow a sympathizer with Hamas, that I am sympathetic to Hamas, that I support Hamas, whatever they're going to say. Hamas is a terrorist organization. They're atrocious. They commit atrocious acts. That's what terrorists do. And so it's not surprising that Hamas carried out this atrocious terrorist act. That's what they do. This image you see to my left is literally seats covered with photos of the more than 1,000 Israelis who were killed in that attack. And this puts some degree of context, and I certainly want to be fully fair in how I address this situation, because the Israeli people were attacked, and here you have this auditorium, chairs filled with photos of those who were killed in those terror attacks. It was atrocious, in the entire world, for the most part, Israeli had their sympathies, because people can understand. People who are not psychotic can have empathy for others and understand that's horrible. What you had to go through, your people had to go through, and everybody was willing to condemn Hamas easily. They still are. They still are. People on the left, you may be trying to claim, if you're someone on the right, you may be trying to claim that they're sympathizers with Hamas, they defend Hamas, whatever. That's not true. Everybody I've heard from on the left has been calling out Hamas's act for what it was, an atrocious, barbaric, inhuman terrorist attack that does meet the level of a war crime under international law. And so Hamas, what they did was horrible. This gives context to the sheer numbers of people who were brutally murdered, tortured, and raped. There was also between 200 and 300 people who were kidnapped by Hamas. And with those kidnappings, what you had was undoubtedly the people kidnapped were taken to Gaza. That's where Hamas exists. Hamas controls Gaza. And so when they kidnapped the people they did, some were Israeli, some were American, some I believe may have been Thai, people from other countries that were in the area where Hamas attacked. And so the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, the image here to my left, declared that Israel's military would go in and kill all Hamas. They would destroy Hamas. They were going to go in and militarily destroy Hamas. What has ensued has been collective punishment that we have not seen in modern times, on a scale that we've not seen in modern times. Literally, the Israelis started carpet bombing Gaza. Gaza is a very small area. It's about 140 square miles, packed with around 2.5 million people, I believe more than 2.5 million people, in a 143 square mile area. And the vast majority of the people who live there are just poor, very much oppressed, suppressed Palestinians. And before all this began, literally you had around 90% of the population in Gaza did not have clean drinking water before this began. So Israel controls Gaza, and they are not occupiers. I'm not claiming they occupy Gaza, although they are stating now that they will permanently occupy Gaza once they're done destroying it. But they created a complete blockade of Gaza. All of the entryways into and out of Gaza were blockaded by the Israeli government. And so you have exits from Gaza to the sea, that's got a naval blockade on it. You have one exit to Egypt, that has a blockade on it. And then you have 2 or 3 exits into Israel from Gaza, and those were all blocked by the Israelis before this terrorist attack ever happened. Gaza has been, as most people have defined it, an open-air prison. People can't get in, they can't get out. If you're a Palestinian in Gaza, you're just trapped in Gaza. Israel has control of the water. They have control of the gas, of the power. They have complete control of Gaza, of the lives of these Palestinians, and they have kept the quality of life for Palestinians extremely low. Meanwhile, you have the West Bank, where the settlements that people talk about are happening. And in the West Bank, there is no Hamas. Hamas has no footprint, no control, no anything of the West Bank. The West Bank is occupied by Israel, and they are continuing to force Palestinians out of their properties and in placing Zionist supporters into those properties, and that's the occupation. Israel is, and has been for a very long time, continually occupying more and more of the land in the West Bank. So you have the West Bank, there are some Palestinians still there, and you have Gaza. You have some Palestinians who live among the Israeli population, but they are second-class citizens. They don't have the rights of Israelis. And that's why you have people define the situation in Israel as an apartheid state. They are operating like colonizers. They are colonizing the West Bank, and they are suppressing the rights of Palestinians the same way that you had in South Africa, the apartheid South Africa, where blacks were being suppressed by the white British population. And so that's the setup. You had the attack, you have this insanely over-the-top response by Israel. And I'm sure some people would take objection to me saying it's an over-the-top reaction. And one of the weak sauce defenses I've heard people spewing with regard to this, when people talk about how brutal Israel has been, is they'll say, doesn't Israel have the right to defend itself? To which everybody says, of course, Israel has the right to defend itself. The United States has the right to defend itself. Cuba, Britain, England, Germany, France, Japan, South Korea, China. If someone's attacked, you have the ability to defend yourself. Nobody's arguing that. But what is defending yourself? If you attack me and I go into my neighbor's house and kill his kids, is that me defending myself? If you have a child who is being held at gunpoint by someone who broke into your home and the police show up and say, well, he's got your kid, we're going to have to kill the kid to get the bad guy. Are you okay with that? Are you okay if the police show up and say, well, bang, 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 we killed your kid, but we got the bad guy, so you happy? And I assume most rational people would say, no, that's not okay. You can't kill the kid to get the bad guy. You know, if you attack me and I go next door and kill my neighbor's kids, that's not me defending myself. Here's what defending yourself is. And more has been coming out as time has gone by. I mean, this video is 2 months into this whole debacle, and more has been coming out. Initially, early on, we got the revelation that Egypt had caught word of the impending Hamas attack and warned Israel. Israel did nothing in response. Now we're finding out that, and what Egypt gave was that there was a large attack planned by Hamas. An impending attack. Israel kept their military in the West Bank to secure their colonizing effort. That's what they did. Rather than placing their military in a defensive posture to stop the attack, they kept it in the West Bank to further oppress the Palestinians there. Now we're finding out that, more than a year before the attack on October 7th, the Israeli government was not only given forewarning, they were giving explicit details about how the attack was going to be executed, how Hamas was going to execute this massive attack on Israeli soil. And it was very explicit in details. And what we're finding out is that the Israeli government also blew that off. Defending yourself is just that, defending yourself. If the Israeli government would have emplaced military units to be prepared and to stop the Hamas attack, which Israel has the ability to do. There is a massive power dynamic at play here between Israel and the Palestinian population, and certainly the Hamas militants. Israel gets billions and billions of dollars every year from us, from America. They get ammunition, weapons, equipment, vehicles, aircraft. They get everything they need from us for this Iron Dome defense they have. And they have a massive defensive capability. They have a massive offensive capability. But if they wanted to defend themselves against Hamas, which is a ragtag group of radicalized individuals, people who have been radicalized, to be willing to go and sacrifice their lives, potentially lose their lives in the attack of the Israeli state. And they have low levels of weapons, vehicles, and equipment, armament, and ammo. And if you had a prepared and placed IDF, the Israeli Defensive Forces units, when Hamas came to try and attack, Hamas would have been annihilated easily. I mean, Israel has aircraft. We give them aircraft. We train them. Their pilots are able to come here and get trained by our military on how to fly and operate the aircraft and attack with the aircraft. They have the ability to fly over with drones, with aircraft, to find out where Hamas is at, where the route they're taking for the attack, who's there, and they could kill the Hamas militants before they ever got to an attack position, before they ever reached IDF forces in vehicles, tanks, and trucks, and in fighting position. They could just bomb them, shoot missiles or bombs from drones or from aircraft, and get them on the way there. The Israeli government had everything they needed as far as they were warned about this attack coming over a year in advance with details about the attack. Supposedly, according to Israel, which the Israeli government, I hope this is not a huge shock to you, are consummate liars. They work in lies and propaganda massively, but what the government's saying is they didn't believe Hamas had the capability to exercise such an attack. To accomplish such an attack. They blew it off as they don't have the capacity to do this, so we're not worried about it. Whether that's true or not, up to you, up to me, how the person observing it, however you view it. Personally, I view it, my personal opinion, is the government let it happen. And you can call me a crazy conspiracy theorist if you want, but when you know the attack is coming, you know details about how the attack is going to be operated, and you do nothing, sorry, you're letting it happen. And when you let that happen, you are not defending yourself. And going into Gaza and killing men and women and children and babies, that's not defending yourself. That's just retribution. That's revenge. And sure, if somebody killed someone I loved, I may be able to go back and kill them in retaliation. To kill them because of a sense of revenge you have in the moment. We're 2 months into this thing. You listen to the Israeli people who had loved ones die, people who had loved ones kidnapped by Hamas, people who have loved ones who are still kidnapped and held by Hamas. And they're beyond that immediate sense of revenge. They're beyond there because they're human beings. The Israeli people, for the most part, they're just average people. I mean, I don't know how many of them are die-hard supporters of this extreme right-wing government they've got. It sounds like most of the people in Israel are completely fed up with Benjamin Netanyahu by this point. Netanyahu, who himself is facing, similarly to Trump, multiple court cases for his own corruption and criminality. Benjamin Netanyahu is able to avoid his own court cases as long as he keeps this brutal campaign going. For us, for America, we should not be supporting this kind of brutality. This news poll is old by this point. It's at least 2 or 3 weeks old at this point. I've been reading articles, putting stuff together to make this video. And from this poll, 80% of Israelis say Netanyahu must take public responsibility for the October 7th failures. He's the Prime Minister of Israel. He's basically the President of Israel. He's the one leading his Likud party in Israel. And so when they are given forewarning of an attack and they ignore it, and then closer to the attack, they're given warning again about an impending attack and they ignore it, and you can say, well, they just made a calculated mistake. For me, it looks obvious that they let this attack happen. The Israelis are sick and tired of Benjamin Netanyahu, along with most of the world at this point. As far as the United States goes, we also, as a people, are pretty fed up with Benjamin Netanyahu. As far as with America, and this also is at least 2 or 3 weeks old. So CNN came up with this poll earlier on in the whole altercation. Half of Americans, 50%, say the Israeli government's military response to Hamas attack is justified, fully justified. That's half of America earlier on in this engagement. Another 20% say it's partially justified, with just 8% saying that it's not at all justified, with 21% who are unsure. Republicans skew that percentage higher because way more Republicans feel the response is fully justified, with 68% of Republicans, but still 45% of independents believe that the attacks are fully justified. Only 38% of Democrats felt that way. Also, older Americans support the response by Israel, with 81% of those 65 and older supporting Israel's response, while you have 56% of those 50 to 64, 44% of those 35 to 49, and for people 18 to 34, you have 27% saying that it's a fully justified response. And that was weeks ago when I collected that data. Now it's skewed even worse for Israel. The American people are fully in opposition to what Israel is doing right now. When you look at the death toll, and this covers through the end of November. We're in December right now, so it's only going higher. And the death toll is astronomical. And this is mostly undercounted, is most likely undercounted. So we have around 16,000 people who have been killed now. Most likely considerably more than that, because there are so many destroyed buildings, thousands of destroyed buildings in Gaza, and there are piles of rubble and people buried under the rubble. And the Palestinians in Gaza lack the freedom to go and try and dig people out of the rubble. For a while, you had Palestinians trying to dig through the rubble to see if they could find survivors, people who were still alive. But they were doing that while still being bombed incessantly. Thousands and thousands of bombs dropped on Gaza. And so with the death toll, it's massive. And it's getting worse. They had the humanitarian pause, and you can see in the news media, mainstream news media personalities were not willing to say ceasefire. They could not say the word ceasefire. And you can see how our government and our media is linked as far as how they frame a narrative. And so you had people in our government who would refuse to say the word ceasefire. Unfortunately, because I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, he also used the terminology of humanitarian pause. And so we had a humanitarian pause recently to exchange hostages. Hamas gave up some hostages, Israel gave up some hostages, and there was no bombardment of Gaza during that time, and around 300 or 400 trucks of aid were allowed in by the Israelis to get to Palestinians. Trucks with water, with fuel, with food, with medical supplies, to try and help ease the suffering of the Palestinians. But again, it was just a pause. Israel's back to bombing. They're back to the bombs, the rockets. They've got boots on the ground, as they have already entered North Gaza, and I believe by today they've entered South Gaza with troops, and they're still bombing. So the death toll is astronomical. As far as the deaths by age, as you can see, 0 to 4, literally hundreds. 0 to 9, around 1,000. And the data suggests that around 3/4 of the around 16,000 people who are known to have been killed from this Israeli bombardment are women and children. Women and children make up the vast majority of the deaths. You have literally thousands of residences. You have homes, mosques. You have refugee camps. You have buses and ambulances. You have UN warehouses. You have media outlet people, reporters who have been targeted and killed by this Israel bombardment. And one way you can know who's the evil force at a given time is the one that does not want news and images of what's going on to get out. So by this point, I assume there's been at least around 100 reporters killed. Last time I checked it, it was around 70. Maybe they're not reached 100 yet, but I mean, literally, the Israeli military are targeting and killing reporters, people who have press written on the helmet that they're wearing, press written on the front of the flak vest they're wearing, press written on the back of the flak vest they're wearing. They're holding microphones, they're carrying cameras. They're obviously not militants, they're not dangerous, and they're not even necessarily locals from Gaza. They are media from wherever they're from to report on what's going on the ground there, risking their lives, and some of them losing their lives. I'm assuming by this point we've reached 100. Maybe we're not there yet as far as reporters killed. But the Israeli government is trying to keep the story of what's going on in Gaza from getting out. And that shows me they know what they are doing is bad. They know what they're doing is wrong. They know they're committing war crimes. What they don't want is for the Israeli government supporting countries around the world to see that, for the populations of those countries to see that. As I said, you have a lot of women and children dead. The vast majority of the people killed in Gaza during this bombardment are women and children. As you have lives lost, families lost, entire families being killed, as entire neighborhoods are razed to the ground by the IDF military machine that we funded, we trained. What you end up with are kids. Gaza, prior to this bombardment from Israel, was around 50% under the age of 18. Around half the population were children. So you're going to have an outsized number of young deaths when you are indiscriminately bombing and killing everybody in a general area. When the population skews young, there's going to be a lot of young deaths. When you do not target what you're doing and just indiscriminately bomb a population, which is what Israel is doing. And you have literally apocalyptic kind of images coming out of Gaza, where it's just desolation and destruction. Israel is carrying out collective punishment, a war crime. There have been at least two credible reports of Israel, of the IDF using white phosphorus on a civilian population, a war crime. Israel was starving Gaza of water, food, electricity, gas. They turned that stuff off before they started bombing. I mean, you literally have video footage of preemies, prematurely born babies, in incubators. And as the doctor interviewed was saying, he had, in one video I saw, he had, I think, around 8 or 9 preemies together in one bed. And he said they were watching them around the clock, trying to keep them alive, trying to keep them warm, because they had lost their electricity, their fuel. And he said about, I think, 4 or 5 of the babies had already died, and they were trying to keep the ones that were left alive. I mean, cutting off water, food, electricity, fuel, that by itself will kill part of the population. Then you add the bombardment, the bombs, the rockets, the military going in on foot and just going through and killing people. That obviously kills the population as well. But babies, these premature babies, they didn't attack Israel. They weren't a threat to Israel. They could be in the future now, because how do you radicalize somebody? You put them in this kind of situation, kill their entire family. What do they have left? Everybody they loved is gone. Why is everybody they loved gone? Because you killed them indiscriminately, callously. That's somebody who can be radicalized. And so as you see images of these kids, young kids, some babies, some toddlers, some a little older. But I mean, you see a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid staring out with those glazed eyes, that empty stare, because they are in a hospital for treatment. There's somebody that's there with them trying to help them get treatment because they were injured. Meanwhile, their entire family, everybody that loved them, everybody that cared about them, everybody they loved, everybody that they looked to for protection is gone. Their entire family wiped out. You look at those little kids with those glazed looks in their eyes, and that's someone who is able to be radicalized. I mean, once you take away everyone that means anything to someone, what do they have left? And perhaps some of these kids, maybe all of them, it would be awesome if all of them grew up without having hate for the Israeli government, without having hate for the Israeli people. If they could compartmentalize their thoughts and emotions and see that the Israeli government is bad, the Israeli people aren't necessarily bad. The people aren't bad necessarily because the government's bad. But some of those kids are able to be radicalized. So what Israel is doing in this insane bombardment is creating more potential for more radicalized enemies. They're creating their own enemies. And it's just photo after photo of such destruction. Israel has dropped more bombs in the 2 months they've been engaged in this than we dropped in our entire first year attacking Iraq. More bombs. They killed more civilians in these 2 months than we did in our entire first year in Iraq. We attacked Iraq, and that also was an insane engagement that we should not have engaged in. But we attacked Iraq, and there was collateral damage. We attacked military targets, and some civilians also got killed in the process. The Israeli IDF has killed more civilians in these 2 months than we did in a year in Iraq. So who are the bad guys? Is Hamas the bad guys? I would say yes, Hamas are bad guys. They're terrorists. How is the Israeli right-wing government and their IDF, how are they better? How are they better than Hamas? Because when you start critically thinking about what's going on, and you say brutality by terrorist does not justify brutality by a government. Just because it's sanctioned by a government doesn't mean it's right. You have Hamas committed a terror attack on Israel, atrocious, and again a war crime. Now you have Israel's government committing an atrocious attack on the civilian population of Gaza. Their stated goal is to eradicate Hamas, and Israel claims that they're killing 2 civilians for every one Hamas member they kill. That's numbers from Israel. Do I trust it? Not one bit. Like I said, Israel has a very long history of lying, propaganda, and misinformation. You have people in Israel's leadership going on various American news programs, British, Canadian news programs, just being blatantly dishonest when they're being interviewed. If anyone dares to press them, although our news media, for the most part, doesn't try to press them. You had Mehdi Hassan on MSNBC, who was interviewing people and pressing them on the moral justification of what they're doing. And the Israeli leadership, who would go on his show, would just lie. And now Mehdi Hassan's been let go. His show got canceled. So he presents the Palestinians as human beings and calls out the atrocities by the IDF, and he ends up with the show canceled. Coincidence? I'm thinking not. So Mehdi Hassan now is going to be sporadically on MSNBC, it appears. He had a show on Peacock, which is apparently an NBC streaming service that has not been a success so far for NBC. Mehdi Hassan speaks out against what Israel is doing, calling out the war crimes, the barbarism in their attacks on a civilian population, and the war crimes of stuff like collective punishment. Punishing the entire Palestinian population for an attack Hamas did at a single time, at a single place, and the entire Palestinian population gets punished for it. And now you have the IDF on foot in Gaza to kill more people, do more destruction, and as I've said, you've had people within the leadership of the Israeli government stating an ideology of pushing the Palestinians out altogether, just completely pushing them out, which presents other problems. America is by far the largest benefactor of Israel. We give them, as I said, billions and billions of dollars. Year after year, we give them ammo and equipment and weapons and aircraft and vehicles. We are the primary funders of their Iron Dome defense. And so now you have strikes by Islamists on military entities, U.S. military entities, which is going to happen. You have Israel doing what they're doing. They're being not only completely bankrolled by us, but then you have our president saying that we are completely standing behind Netanyahu, the Israeli government, in everything that they're doing. You've had some people in the U.S. government of late starting to back away from that position. Joe Biden's weak ass, however, doesn't seem to be able to do that. So you have Joe Biden, who, and I'm critical of Joe Biden. I had very low expectations for Joe Biden when he got into office. Some things he's done, I've been surprised by. He's done some rather good things. Some things are a wash. Some things are negative. But for some reason, and I'm thinking that reason is financial, Joe Biden cannot seem to condemn Israel. He cannot seem to rein in Benjamin Netanyahu. And you have people in the U.S. government, who get massive amounts of campaign donations from Israeli Zionist supporting PACs, stuff like AIPAC and the Democratic whatever for Israel, DMFI, whatever it's called, Democratic Majority for Israel. They pump money into the pockets of politicians, political parties, and so you have politicians afraid to call out Israel for what they're doing. Biden is the president. He should be the one standing up to Netanyahu and saying, stop this bombardment. You're engaging in war crimes. You're killing people who did nothing to you, who are not going to do anything to you. And you have politicians trying to claim we don't have control of Israel. But we do. We have a lot of control of Israel because, as I said, those billions of dollars, all that military equipment, weaponry, we can put conditions on it. We can say, you get nothing else until you stop your attack on Israel, until you stop your attack on Palestine, the Palestinians, until you stop this and start actually coming up with a plan forward. Peaceful plan forward. No more. We're not supporting you with weapons anymore. No more ammo, no more weapons, no more vehicles, no more equipment, no more aircraft. None of it anymore. Unless you start a peaceful path forward with Palestinians. I mean, honestly, what's the best way to cripple Hamas? That's to have a healthy, happy, thriving Palestinian population. If they are happy, if they're free, if they have freedom, the ability to go and get jobs, to work, earn, make a living, have a life, have a home, be able to raise their kids in peace and happiness. How easily radicalized are they? That's the way you end up without a terrorist organization trying to kill you. The leaders of Hamas are not being killed. The leaders of Hamas, they're in Yemen or Qatar or wherever they're at. I mean, they're going on television in Qatar. You have the leaders of Hamas, just like the leaders of any terrorist organization. They're not in Gaza. They're not there fighting. They don't fight. What they do is radicalize people who are able to be radicalized. If you have a happy, healthy, thriving population, people are not going to be able to radicalize them against you. So that's the path forward, is to have Palestinians able to live healthy, happy lives. And the right-wing Israeli government doesn't want that. You've heard Benjamin Netanyahu talk about supporting Hamas. The Israeli right-wing government supporting Hamas, because Hamas is their tool to making sure there's never a one-state or two-state solution. You know, if you've been alive very long on this planet, you've heard somebody talk about a one-state and a two-state solution. The whole premise of that is you either have one state where Israelis and Palestinians are able to live together peacefully in harmony, or you split up the region and have two separate countries, Palestine and Israel. I don't know at the point we're at right now if we can have a two-state solution. But the thing is, the right-wing Netanyahu government doesn't want a one or two-state solution. They want Israel to be the only government there. They want a Zionist, Jewish, theocratic government, and for the Palestinians to not exist. So they're trying, in some ways, to kill the Palestinians, to push the Palestinians out. Back in the late 40s, when you had the Nakba, the massive relocation of Palestinians, around 750,000 Palestinians forced out of their land, and many of them ended up in Egypt. It's right next to the area. You still have a rather large Palestinian descent population in Egypt because of that in the late 40s when the Palestinians were pushed out. And right now you have people in the government suggesting that's a possibility of how to move forward with this, is to just push all the Palestinians out and for Gaza to become just part of Israel and for Israelis to live there. And then you still have the Palestinians being killed in the West Bank. I think there's been around 200 since this conflict started, the bombardment of Gaza started. There's still been around 200 Palestinians killed in the West Bank, where there is no Gaza, where there is no terrorist attack originating from. Then you have the hostages. Some were recently released. You're able to see now on news feeds families being reunited with a family member who was held hostage. You have hostages who are hostile towards the Netanyahu government. You have hostages who have talked about how some of the hostages that Hamas were holding have been killed in the bombing. That's one of the things many people have pointed out, that Hamas took all these hostages. Where are they going to take them to? They're going to take them to Gaza. If you start bombing the piss out of Gaza, then it's very likely you'll kill some of the hostages as well. Now, Hamas does not give a damn about the Palestinian population, because let's face it, Hamas leadership knew there would be a massive and violent response from Israel when they planned and executed that attack on the Israelis. I would argue the Israeli government doesn't care about the lives of Israelis either, because one, they ignored tons of warning, plenty of warning and preparation time to repel the Hamas attack, and after the Hamas attack, they used it as an excuse to go kill massive amounts of Palestinians, the people they want out of the area to begin with. And in the process of what they're doing to the Palestinians, there are going to be some people in that region that are able to be radicalized now, who weren't radical before. But now you have people who have lost most of, if not all of their family, everybody they care about. And now those people are able to be radicalized. And Joe Biden just continues supporting Israel. He has pushed for more money, more weapons, more money, more ammo, more weapons. And it's got to stop. Joe Biden is too weak or ignorant to be the leader right now. He can't do what needs to be done, which is to tell the Israeli government, one, stop. Two, no more aid, no more money, no more weapons, no more equipment until you start a path forward to sow peace between yourselves and the Palestinians. Other countries should not have to absorb the Palestinian population into their population because you just don't want them there. I understand the concept of Hamas as part of the Palestinian population. Hamas is a terrorist organization. They don't have military bases. They don't have military air bases. You know, you have people saying that Hamas uses human shields. And so what you conjure up in your mind is some evil terrorist guy holding a kid up in front of him so that his enemies that kill the kid instead of him. What they're talking about is living in an apartment building where other Palestinians, non-Hamas members, non-radicalized Palestinians live, you know. And there's a massive tunnel, there's a massive network of tunnels under Gaza where you have Hamas militants that move around and get together, have their meetings, do whatever they do. And without a doubt, there's probably, right now, in some of those tunnels, you have hostages being held there. Some of the hostages that Hamas has left are probably being held in those tunnels. because that's where Hamas is at. And so when you do this massive bombardment of Gaza, you're killing mostly civilians who are not part of Hamas, because they're in the tunnels. Hamas leadership's in some other country, and what you're doing is causing people to be able to be radicalized, because they can't understand why you're being so horrible, so brutal to them. They didn't attack you. They never planned to attack you. They did nothing to you. And saying that Hamas is using human shields is that they just live and operate around where other Palestinians do, because they don't have military bases to go back to. They don't have bunkers to go back to. And so that's no different than saying that there are criminals right now in America who live in neighborhoods, apartments, who drive on our roads. You could say they're using human shields because they live in an apartment building with other people who aren't criminals. But it's not that they're using human shields. They're just criminals who are living their life, and they have to live their life the same way the rest of us do. In a house, in a subdivision, in an apartment, wherever. They don't have some criminal stronghold to go back to. So you could say that average criminals in America are using human shields the same way that people claim that Hamas is using human shields. They just live among the Palestinian population. I would assume a good deal of the Hamas militants stay in the tunnels underneath Gaza so they don't get killed by the Israelis. They leave the Israelis to just wipe out the Palestinian population like they seem to have no problem doing. And so my question with this whole turn of events, the massive amount of brutality and violence that's going on, how close are we to another world war? Like I said at the beginning, the Middle East is a powder keg. You have different people for different reasons constantly trying to strike matches in the middle of this powder keg. So the countries that are connected to what's going on right now with Israel and their bombardment of Palestine, countries in the region, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Yemen, the Gulf Arab states, which is Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, Morocco, and Tunisia. And for a great deal of these countries, they sympathized with Israel after the attack of Hamas. They condemned Hamas. Some of these countries support, like I said, Qatar, Yemen, possibly Oman. You have Hamas leadership staying in those countries, freely going on news media in those countries. You have countries that support Hamas ideologically because they're Arab, they're Islamic supporters. And some of these countries support the jihadist, more radicalized Islamists. But even those that typically are sympathetic to Hamas condemned the attack by Hamas on Israel because they knew, just like I'm sure the leaders of Hamas knew, what the response would be by the Israelis, by the Israeli government. I shouldn't say the Israelis because the Israeli people aren't doing it. And as far as the IDF soldiers, they're soldiers. I was in the Army, the U.S. Army. You get orders, you follow what your orders say. So I don't condemn all of the actions of the IDF. For the IDF members who would brutalize, rape women the Palestinian women, I don't at all sympathize with that. But as far as soldiers carrying out orders, I understand how that goes. These countries that are all connected in that region understand they understood what the response would be by Israel for the Hamas attack. As far as if you are one of these countries that are sympathetic to Hamas, you would say that's a horrible strategic move by Hamas. It gave Israel the ability to use that attack as an excuse to do the brutality they're doing now. That's what Israel's doing. They're using that Hamas attack as an excuse to commit war crimes. And that's why I say the Hamas leadership, Hamas radicals, don't care about the lives of Palestinians because they were willing to do that attack knowing that Palestinian civilians, possibly massive amounts of them, would be killed. And I say the Israeli government doesn't care about the lives of Israelis, and some of the Israelis who were held captive understand that and are irate with Netanyahu and his government. But I say the Israeli government also does not care about the lives of Israelis because they enact this massive plan of collective punishment and genocidal activity. I mean, they're doing a ethnic cleansing, at least, of the Palestinians. However you're going to word it. I mean, people are trying to play all kinds of games, semantic games with words right now because of allegiance to Israel. But at the very least, you are ignorant, weak, or an evil, complicit person if you can't at least say that Israel is engaging in ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. Again, a war crime. A war crime. It's a war crime according to the United States. It's a war crime according to international law. International law that we helped set up. And unfortunately, Joe Biden, and I should do a video about this here sometime coming up when I have the time, is tanking in the polls. He's got a lot of problems at home. As I said, the American people have started going way more opposed to what Israel's doing. I mean, they started off 50% thought it was fully justified, closer to October 7th. As we've gotten further and further away from October 7th, you have now an overwhelming majority of Americans say this is absurd, it's barbaric, it has to stop. And right now, a lot of the people you have supporting what Israel is doing are the right-wing Republicans in this country, supporting the right-wing nut job Netanyahu and his government in Israel. You have Israelis not supporting what Netanyahu's doing. So this is not a Jewish thing. I'm sure somebody will say I'm anti-Semitic for making this video. Some people will say I'm sympathetic to Hamas. Not true. I'm not anti-Semitic. I have nothing against Jews, Jewish people, and you have people trying to use that term, anti-Semitism, to attack anyone who calls out the right-wing Israeli government for what they're doing. It's not anti-Semitism to criticize the government. It would be anti-Semitism to attack Jewish people because they're Jewish. But the Israeli government are the ones who are being criticized. They should be. And our government, which has a lot of power over Israel because of money, of weapons, of equipment, we have the ability to say no more. You have Jews in Israel being assaulted by the IDF for protesting what their own government's doing in Gaza. You have Jews in Israel being beat up by the Israeli government's military for protesting their assault on Gaza. But you have all these countries which are trying to figure out how to operate with what's going on. Some of these countries are hostile towards Israel. Some of these countries have been trying to make friends with Israel through the United States as an intermediary. As I said, Egypt has a sizable Palestinian descent population because of the 1948 Nakba, where Palestinians were displaced. A lot of Palestinians, around 750,000 Palestinians. And their descendants are now living in Israel. Israel is concerned about the rhetoric from the Israeli government of trying to push Palestinians out, and they are thinking, well, the quickest way to push them out is into Egypt, and we are not set up to take them. You have Republicans in this country completely opposed to the idea of taking in Palestinian refugees to America. I mean, the right wing has been, since Trump certainly, completely opposed to helping anybody who's in need. And it would take a very long time to get Palestinians to the United States anyway because of the vetting process we have for refugees to immigrate here. It's very long, so even if we were to say we will take 300,000 Palestinian refugees, it could take years, literally years, and they would have to be sent to some other country to await the vetting process to be able to be allowed into the United States. It's a mess, and as I said, you've got individual militants, small militant groups that have been attacking the U.S. military because of our support of Israel and what Israel's doing. You have, at any time, Hezbollah or any of these other militants in the area could decide. There's fighting going on every day right now between Lebanon and Israel. Small amounts, it's small groups of people attacking Israel because of what they're doing. But how close are we to this blowing up? You have already the fighting in Ukraine, where Russia invaded Ukraine. You have rumors of China wanting to invade Taiwan and go ahead and assume control of Taiwan. You have this going on with Egypt barbarically assassinating the Palestinian population in Gaza. And you have these countries trying to figure out if someone is going to stop it, if it's going to escalate, if it's going to grow, spread around the area. I mean, we aren't that far away from a world war. I mean, what would it take if Egypt or Jordan or Lebanon sent military into Israel? So you've got Israel blowing the crap out of Gaza right now. And if Lebanon sent a military force into Israel and started attacking into Israel, are we going to respond by sending U.S. troops in there to fight them? Will some other country come in to add to the to the conflict. Will China or Russia get involved? Because Russia's already in a war with Ukraine, and if they could spread war somewhere else, that would leave fewer resources for America to help Ukraine out. We're not that far from war starting out. I mean, World War II didn't start with a group of countries all of a sudden, okay, let's go into war now. You had a country that started attacking people. That's Germany attacking people around them, Poland, France, etc. And it grew. That fighting grew. The war expanded, the fighting expanded, and we ended up with a world war. Have we already started World War III because of America's leadership not being able to rein in the right-wing government of Israel and say, you cannot do this? To say, we will help you if you want to send in strategic strike teams to go and actually kill Hamas. We will help prepare you and train you. Perhaps the U.S. would have sent some of their own special forces in with Israeli special forces to go into Gaza to start going through the tunnels and weeding out the Hamas militants and rescuing the hostages. That would be defending yourself. If you went in there and attacked Hamas, you would be defending yourself because Hamas is the one that attacked you, and Hamas is the one that will attack you again. Unfortunately, you've now allowed a massive percentage of the Palestinian population to become radicalized by Hamas leadership because of your own brutality, because of your own terrorism on that population. A population that Israel has been oppressing for decades at this point. Decades. Israel has been engaged in this colonial project of trying to weed out Palestinians, take their land, and oppress the population. And so that's my discussion of this subject. We're not done. The temporary hostage exchange pause is over, and Israel's back to bombing. Now they're bombing in southern Gaza. They've got troops, I believe, by today or tomorrow, will reach southern Gaza and will start their ground forces engagement in southern Gaza, the place where the Palestinians were told to go to for safety. Now they're attacking there. And they've been bombing southern Gaza from the start. I mean, they told people in North Gaza, Palestinians in North Gaza, to evacuate to South Gaza. They gave them 24 hours. 24 hours for a population of over 1 million people to move from the north to the south, which doesn't work logistically. But then, as they were evacuating, buses, ambulances, people trying to get medical patients, buses trying to get massive loads of Palestinians to the southern Gaza, because that's where they were supposed to go to be safe, were being attacked by rockets and bombs as they were trying to leave. Our government doesn't have the spine so far to fix the problem, to tell no to Benjamin Netanyahu. And for any of you right-wingers who happen across this video that say, oh, Trump would have done. No, he wouldn't have. Trump was a lapdog for Netanyahu as well. Trump's the one that moved the capital from Tel Aviv to Israel, or the embassy from Tel Aviv to Israel. And the Republicans are the ones saying, finish them, like freaking Mortal Kombat or something. You look at the Republicans in the debate, that's the primary debates that are going on right now, and they're all gung-ho for Netanyahu to kill the Palestinians. You listen to these Republican voters at Trump rallies, 100% supporting Netanyahu killing Palestinians. So, yes, Biden is weak. Way too weak to be able to handle what's going on right there right now. And too greedy. I mean, the Democrat Party gets funding from these Israel government-supporting PACs. And you already have PACs that have said they're going to attack progressives who have been speaking out on behalf of the Palestinian people. People like AOC, like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. Rashida Tlaib is a representative in the House who is of Palestinian descent. I'm sure at this point she's had relatives die because of what Israel's doing. And she has been very vocal about speaking out about what Israel is doing. And Rashida Tlaib alone, the AI PAC, the American Israeli PAC, has said they will spend $20 million to try and defeat her in a primary. So all these progressives in the House, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Ro Khanna, all these progressives who are trying to speak rationally and call for a ceasefire. Stop the fighting, stop the killing, stop the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza, and work a diplomatic solution. That's what you're supposed to be as a statesman, a diplomat. You're supposed to come up with solutions that don't involve violence. I understand in some cases there is no solution other than violence. But I would say those solutions are very few. It's just that too many people are willing to go to violence too fast. But Joe Biden was very weak on this matter, and he has done good work in other areas. I mean, he's done better than I expect Joe Biden to do. I was surprised at how good of a job he did do. But when it comes to this, he's no better than the Republicans. He's not. Anyway, thanks for anyone who manages to happen across this video and watch it. Please give me a like, a subscribe. If you have productive things to say, please leave me a comment. People that are just going to insult me and criticize me are going to do that anyway. By all means, if you have any constructive questions or comments, drop me a comment. If you want me to talk about something specific, drop me a comment about that. Give me a like, a subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a good day.